Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present. I'm really honored to be part of this incredible cohort, and I'm excited to be sharing our work on mathematical beauty in chemical explorations. So, before I begin talking about science, some personal reflections. I grew up in India, and about 15 years back, I wasn't really fluent in English. And for me, what I found was that mathematics was a language. It was something I could understand. I was good at it. And with encouragement from my parents and teachers and friends, I became more advanced in mathematics than my peers. And what I found to be really beautiful about mathematics was that there was joy in rediscovering things. So we played a lot of emphasis on discovering something new, but I found that there could also be meaning in deriving the same equation from different methods and different routes. And to give you an example of this, what you see here is the famous Pythagoras theorem. I remember I was trying to derive it back in high school, and I was never able to do it on my own. When I learned the derivation using similarity triangles, I thought that was really one of the primary derivations. And then later down in my grad school, through a course, I learned there's a separate derivation using dimensional analysis. And so very different methods can allow you to come to the same conclusion. And I found a lot of meaning in sort of this rediscovering things through mathematics. Another thing that has been constant in my scientific journey has been teaching. So I started teaching at a very early age. So here you see that this is when I was an undergrad. I was a part-time instructor for high school students, and I was teaching physics, chemistry, and maths. Um, and I found that it forced me to distill information into things that my students can understand. And to understand a student's confusion, I also had to ask meaningful questions. And so teaching became sort of an important part of my journey. And over the years, my mentors, who are at the bottom right of the screen, instilled me in this importance of teaching and learning from each other. And so the group that you see on top is my current group. And again, there's always a back and forth, and I really learn from them and also try to teach them at the same time. And classroom teaching and this back and forth has become very central to my research and my group's explorations because a lot of questions we ask are based on teaching. Uh, and so one of the subjects from maths that really piqued my interest in sort of this field was transport phenomena. This was really my first exposure, and it allowed me to sort of think about this interface of math and chemistry. To give you an example, we can think of a very simple thought experiment. So let's imagine there is some only diffusion happening in a system, and there are two dyes, a yellow dye and a green dye. And both of them have same diffusion, and they cannot escape the sort of circular region. So if I just let them sort of mix with each other, we will see these blurry patterns emerge, and then over a period of time, they will essentially sort of become uniform and take sort of a color in between. Now, what if I also add some reaction? So this reaction is that my green dye is actually getting consumed, and at the same time, my yellow dye is actually getting produced. And so if I turn something like that, you can simulate this using mathematics, and what you can see is that the colors sort of similarly evolve, but because I'm producing more yellow dye, I will actually get a more yellowish color. And sort of this sort of chemical reaction and mechanisms could be given mathematical meaning through this course of transport phenomena. So with that context in mind, I will show you another picture and then ask some questions, and hopefully you'll try to understand how to combine chemistry and mathematics to answer that question. And so this is the beautiful male ornate boxfish. You can see this in Birchville at San Diego. And some of the basic questions when you see these fishes, this is so beautiful. These are beautiful hexagons and stripes. So some questions that come to mind are, how did the fish get these patterns to begin with? And if you dig a little bit deeper, you will think, well, these patterns must have arise out of something more uniform in the background and then sort of, assemble into these beautiful hexagons and stripes. So we can go one level further and say, how can heterogeneity arise out of homogeneity in a diffusive system? And the key idea here is diffusive system, because as you saw just a minute ago, that if you have diffusion, things tend to become very uniform. And so could there be some other transport processes that matter? And so this is sort of the question, mathematical question that you can think about when you're thinking of these patterns. And this was first thought about by Alan Turing, the famous computer scientist. And this work was then later taken up by Ilya Prigogine, who's a Nobel laureate in chemistry. And what they discovered is that diffusion does promote homogeneity. And if I have complex reactions, not the kinds that you saw in the dye example, but more complex reaction, there is this delicate dance between diffusion and reaction. Is that diffusion is trying to make things uniform, and reaction is trying to make things non-uniform. And under the right conditions, if you slightly perturb a uniform system, even though if it is diffusive, it can actually adopt a pattern. And these patterns are known as Turing patterns. So you saw this sort of male ornate boxfish, and you see the real, very crisp and beautiful hexagons. And if you simulate using this classical Turing patterns approach, you can actually get to the hexagons using something known as the Bruce-Slater model, which Ilya Prigogine discovered. However, as you can see, there are some differences from the reality. We have much more blurry patterns, and we don't have as much direct match between between the real life and the simulated curves. And so if you think about it, that makes sense, because if I have diffusion, I should get this shallow mixing and so on, as you saw in the video a few minutes ago. So how can I get to sort of a scenario we can start to resemble more realistic patterns? And this was a question that my group asked. And so mathematically speaking, we are thinking of some negative diffusion, right? So we see things are very blurry. We would like to make them crisp. And so we were basically kind of thinking about it, and we thought maybe when these cells are assembling, would they be reacting to some sort of a soup in the background, which is diffusive in nature? But this soup sort of gives some negative diffusivity to cells, so they stick together. And so if you think about diffusion just in a sort of, dropping an ink in sort of a beaker and slowly sort of diffusing out and making things uniform, you can think of a process, and this is a thought experiment, where if you have particles also in this setup, and if you drop a dye, and if these particles think of this ink as a food or sort of as a thread, they might get attracted or repelled, and they will stick together as you sort of go along. And so this process is known as diffusiophoresis. So basically, the idea is that there is some sort of a soup of sort of Turing patterns going on in the background, which are the classical Turing patterns, but these cells are assembling on top via diffusiophoresis. So this is what we sort of proposed in one of our studies. And so what we did was think of it like this. Diffusion is sort of this paintbrush where we're painting things sort of, this, and there's sort of, you leave some sort of blurry things. But when you take diffusiophoresis, it's like a Sharpie. So I'll show you the simulation. And then you see the classical Turing patterns on the left, and then the sharp, much more sharp patterns with diffusive forces. So by getting inspired from the mathematics, we were able to sort of propose this, and then you see the classical Turing patterns and then the diffusive forces enhanced Turing patterns. That's a term we coined. The diffusive forces enhanced Turing patterns are much more closer to the reality of this fish. So yeah, next time whenever you go to an aquarium, think about diffusive forces, and it might be playing a role in the patterns that fishes have and sort of other animals have. And I want to end this talk by sharing some examples of where I think this field is going. And so what is the future of transport phenomena? So these are just some topics that I have thought about. One of them is artificial light. So what you see here is these micro rotors rotating when the light is on. When you turn the light off, they become brown in again. So you're giving sort of life-like properties to colloids and small-scale particles. So yeah, it's something I find really exciting. You are basically giving functionality and synthetic design, and you're encoding that using transport phenomena. We have also done some simulations in my group. As you will see, we'll sort of give these simulations and give them very lifelike and like properties by giving them some rules. Then another area which is very exciting is theoretical electrochemistry. Chemical physics is a very, very fascinating subject. So what you see here is a chemical engineering news article where which highlighted our work about how electrolytes are moving in a network of pores, or called rules of the road for ions. And this area has lots of opportunities about thinking about interfaces, reactions, transport phenomena, and multi-scale problems. So there's a lot of exciting opportunities in this area. I'm very excited to see where this field goes. And then finally, a lot of time, what I've talked about, I haven't talked about complex media. So this paper that came out very recently talks about how biofilms grow inside complex media and make these beautiful cables. So you can imagine a lot more complexity can arise if you're going away from Newtonian fluids and non-Newtonian fluids, which are always there in real life, and especially in sort of, biological systems. So I'm really excited about transport phenomena, and I hope this was a good